Boom! And we are live. I am joined by former NBA player, TV and radio for ESPN and CBS Sports. Phenomenal content. Ryan Hollins, how are you?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I really appreciate you coming on. I love your stuff. You're always posting good content with the lives and just your material when you're on shows, when you're hosting shows. You could tell you're still a fan of the game.
No, I appreciate it, man. And a lot of people forget, even as a guy who played 10 years in the NBA, I never forget those moments of, just like you said, being a fan or the excitement. So NBA basketball, I look at it like this, man. It's the easiest job in the world if you want to call it a job. You'd be playing basketball for free somewhere, and you'd be talking about basketball at a barbershop or with your buddies, regardless. So, why not make some type of a living out of it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why that's the career I'm heading in and the career I am in and pursuing. And it's funny, a lot of my friends say, oh, well, aren't you trying to focus on getting paid and all that? I'm like, I'm not worried about getting paid because I'm doing what I love. And whatever you do, that will come. But what's more important to me is chasing what I love. And that's just talking sports. I do it at the barbershop, like you said. I'll do it at work, working out. Podcast, obviously, is where you do the most of it. But I just love it. And so now I finally have someone I can pick your brain with a little bit here. I got you on the podcast. So the first thing I want to hit you with, so we have games tonight. Milwaukee just blew out Miami. We'll get into that. We have Portland, Denver. But I want to kind of shed some light on Steph Curry with you. And I wanted to run something by you. So I've come up with these Marvel comparisons a while back, like a couple of years back. And I said, you know what? This Steph Curry situation reminds me of Iron Man, Tony Stark. And here's why. I don't know if you've watched Iron Man 2, but a lot of people try imitating his suit and try making the Iron Man suit, and they couldn't do it. It reminded me of Steph Curry. Now the whole game is playing like Steph Curry, shooting threes, pulling threes, but I don't think anyone can do it like him. And it got me to thinking, I don't know if anyone ever will. To me, he is the most skilled basketball player you can argue of all time. Would I be crazy for saying that?
No, you wouldn't. And it's funny. I always, I kind of laughed at teams trying to emulate the three ball. I think it's better because the skill set of NBA players is raised. But when you jack up a lot of threes and you're not Steph Curry or Klay Thompson, it hurts you. And if you think about the champs last year were the Los Angeles Lakers, they didn't shoot the three ball well. They defended, they got in the paint, they got to the free throw line, and that team was successful. So if you don't have three of the best shooters of all time, Steph, Klay, and KD, that system is not going to be the same. But I do feel like the overall just skill set of the league, it's different than when I played. You had two non-shooters in the game for the most part, and a three-point shooting guy came in as a bit of a specialty to stretch the floor. Now all five guys can shoot threes. And right. Even if your centers are left open, they're going to step up and knock down that shot. So, I think ultimately you are absolutely on to something that Steph Curry winning a championship with the three ball. It's not something that we'll often see. But if you go back and watch 2000s basketball, 2005, 2006, and kind of before that, there's two bigs on the floor. There's no spacing. It's disgusting to watch because now everything is so free flowing. But you're so right that, there are teams that play that system and it just doesn't look good. They're out there getting blasted because you can't shoot, and Steph Curry's a guy who hits contested threes. It is hard. It's hard to even emulate that. I mean, it's literal magic on the floor.
Yeah. Okay. Now I have two parts to that. First is, as someone who was a big for multiple NBA teams, had success in the NBA, does it infuriate you a little bit to see like you'll have a Porzingis down low or he'll have a mismatch? Anthony Davis sometimes had a mismatch with Jay Crowder. Now, granted, Jay Crowder's strong, but clearly there's a size difference. Does it irritate you as a former big to be like, man, why are you not in the basket? Like, why are you not posting up right now? And a lot of the times we see the bigs now fade and play a perimeter game. Does that frustrate you? Do you wish there was more of a balance?
I think just as a basketball player in general, it will, because, what you're going to find when we call the game being positionless, it's not so much the big guys will be out shooting threes. They'll be able to do a little bit of everything. I think if a guard has a mismatch in the post, you're going to post up a guard and space your big. There's certain scenarios like that. Duncan Robinson, 6'8". That's an old school power forward type. In today's modern NBA, possibly some centers are 6'8". So I think it's more of an element of being a basketball player and realizing your mismatch. A guy that always stood out to me and a part of the Warriors, as we kind of talk about them, is Iguodala. They would post up Iguodala if you would guard him with the opposing team's point guard. And it wasn't that Iggy was this great post player, but it was being a basketball player and realizing a mismatch. So, yeah, if Anthony Davis has that matchup, he's got to get into the paint. He's got to be assertive, because now you put a slower guy on him and he's popping out to the three, and now the three ball becomes effective. But I think, you have to read what you're going against. And that's the biggest thing, when we're talking about mismatches or taking advantage, or I don't think it's just about being a big. I think it's a ball player. And I think that's the evolution of the game. If you put Joel Embiid through a skilled workout with three other NBA guards, he may shoot the ball and do the moves just as well, or even better than them. So I think that's the next evolution of the game. Nikola Jokic also the same way. He could probably step over, step back, through the legs, tween, whatever, Curry step, and hit all those same shots like a guard.
Right. Now, I think the world, not even just the NBA, the world in business and in life, it's a copycat world. One thing works, everyone's trying to do it. So like I said, everyone's trying to imitate Curry 3. We saw Kobe Bryant was the closest thing to MJ. Do you think there will ever be someone that is going to be close to Steph, that can even come remotely to what he does? Would it be a Trae Young? Obviously, they're different players, but do you think there will ever be someone that's as magical as Steph Curry?
Nah, I don't think we're going to see it the same way we haven't seen Shaq's dominance. We try to crown a lot of baby Shaqs, and Dwight was like Shaq, or Shaq said, well, Giannis dunks in the paint like me, but he ain't you, Shaq. No. So I think that's tough. But it is, the irony is that in a small span of time, we're seeing Trae Young that's very close, that can shoot the ball from deep. But Trae's actually stronger and better in the paint than Steph was at this point in his career. He finishes very well. And I thought when Trae Young stopped trying to be Steph Curry, Trae Young's career went like this. You remember that first half of the season of his rookie year, they were calling him a bust. They were really on him. And now he's showing improving what everybody expected. But he's very good in the lane, and he's an excellent passer. That's something that, Steph really developed, or Steph shoots the ball so well that the passes that he makes or the dribble moves that he makes, they seem exaggerated, because you have to lunge and play him. You play him what we would call dribble used. So when a guy is used his dribble, you press up on him because there's nowhere to go. Steph Curry shoots the ball so well, you play him dribble used while he has a dribble, almost forcing him. You're like chasing him to the rim and off the three-point line, because that's how effective that he is.
Yeah, it's insane. Absolutely insane. I wanted to shift to this, and I wanted to talk about Milwaukee, specifically Giannis. So here's another one of my weird analogies. I've done musicians and artists, rap artists, to NBA players, and I've called Giannis like Travis Scott, where he needs certain role players around his playing style. Like Travis needs a lot of auto-tune, a lot of different sound effects, but he found what worked for him. Travis Scott's a number one seller. Giannis has become an MVP, a defensive player of the year. But in a weird way, I feel like he needs to change his style, change his flow. And I feel like if he were to get the ball a little bit more out of his hands, be a little bit more efficient and effective in the post, Milwaukee may have a greater recipe to win. Because I feel like I've seen this movie before, Ryan, with Braun, but I just don't think he's the passer of Braun. I don't know if he can have a deep playoff run with this style. Do you?
No, I don't think so. And it's funny, everyone thinks, shoot the three, Giannis, shoot the three. I don't think the three is the answer. I don't think necessarily the low post, but the mid post. I played with Dirk Nowitzki and Paul Pierce, and those were two of, probably the greatest shooters of all time, or at least scorer, playmaker, wherever you want to do it. I'm not saying that to argue a point. But if Giannis, had that one leg fadeaway off the elbow with his length and athleticism, who was going to get there or get to it? And now you get a situation where you can spread the floor. You can't double team him because he's facing you, and he can get absolutely busy. So I think that's something realistic for Giannis to develop, because when you're playing against someone big and strong and fast, and trust me, from my playoff experiences, everybody's playing hard. You're not going to see the rim at the clutch time, because guys are just that much more ready to guard you and be prepared. So I do think that's something that Giannis has to develop. We saw, Chris Middleton ended up being the guy down the stretch that they went to in a pick and roll, but Giannis ends up playing more of a traditional 5 spot, and it's tough because he's so dynamic. And myself and a couple of my colleagues have kind of said he's more Shaq. Shaq wasn't going to close the games out for you. No disrespect to the big fella, but Shaq was still a Finals MVP of the league, did all those certain things in his dominance. But Kobe Bryant was the one that finished the games. And I don't think it's any disrespect if you're Shaq, if you're Scottie Pippen, if you're somewhat of a hybrid for Giannis. I think that the sky's the limit for him. But I think he's somewhere in between there, but he's not a closer. And I said that on on with Greeny on what's his show, Get Up, and everybody went crazy. And he's not a closer. There's no diss. Everybody went crazy. They told me how stupid I was, and ain't one tweet coming through right now about that. But, I do think there's something he's going to develop. It was a very short off season, so it was tough for him to really add to his game during that time. But I think Giannis is more so in these playoffs understanding who he is in his role.
Right. Now, how much talk about the pressure? You've been in the locker rooms. What is the pressure like for him? Because now he has 2 MVPs. He has a Defensive Player of the Year. He just lost in round 1 last year. They're up 2-0 now against Miami. You can never count Miami out, but they're obviously in the driver's seat. What is the pressure like for him? Like, what does he have to get to for us to say, okay, that was a good offseason?
You got to win a championship.
So it's championship or bust.
Because he's that good. When we compare Giannis, we were ready to give the LeBron reigns to him, the face of the NBA reigns, the KD reigns to him, during the regular season, and he couldn't do it against Kawhi Leonard. So he's not compared to like Dame Lillard. It's not like or Anthony Davis, prior to the championship. It's not like, hey, this is a good regular season guy. We know he's one of the best we've ever seen in the regular season. Ain't too many people on this earth walking around with accolades that compare to Hakeem Olajuwon and Michael Jordan. You know what I'm saying? 2-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. Those are or runner-up Defensive Player of the Year. Those are accolades that don't get compared to. So it's going to have to be a championship or bust for us to take that next step with him, because he's proven, he and James Harden in particular also have proven everything that we needed to see out the regular season.
Right. No, and I agree with that. Talk about James Harden. I want to stick in the East and shift to Brooklyn. And I specifically wanted to ask you this question because you've been in the locker rooms. You play for multiple NBA teams. What is that like right now? Take me and my audience through that locker room. So obviously you have superstars, first year together, but it seems like the expectation is championship or bust. What do you think that locker room is like, considering the amount of pressure and expectations they have?
They're still figuring it out. However you want to put it. Kevin Durant's done an excellent job. He's seen championships before. He's the veteran in the locker room. He's the man with the jewelry who hit the big shot. I know Kyrie hit a big shot, but you can argue that it was KD's championship, and they're both kind of similar in a sense. But I would definitely give KD the nod over Kyrie, and I believe that they're loose. Guys are rallying around them, but at some point, that leadership from KD is going to be put to test. So I think he's done an excellent job so far. But we got to see who that team is when pressure hits them. It doesn't look like they're going to get too much pressure from Boston in the first round. I see how dynamic they are offensively, but you're going to have to truly gel. I don't care how much talent you have. Just ask LeBron when their big three joined, down in South Beach. How much talent you have. You got to have the chemistry. You got to have the hard workers. You got to have everything that essentially goes right. There's only one basketball that scores, but that's a team, if they execute, has a strong chance, if not favored in many eyes, to be NBA champs. But, we're going to see who they are when things get tight. But the positive signs is they're free. They speak their mind. They're opinionated, even though it hasn't been always popular with Kyrie Irving. And another thing is that they have each other's back. Someone said something about Kyrie and KD jumped all over him, in the media. I think it was Barkley. And that tone was set in the locker room of, nah, it's us against the world, and I think they bought into that, and I think that's the right way to go. I don't agree with all the media backlash and bringing the attention, but if you're going to do it, have each other's back in the process, and they have.
Right. No, right. Absolutely. Now, I look at the game in 3 ways. I go through like history, you go through the stats, statistical stuff, the numbers, but the numbers don't always say anything. You go with the eye test. They've only played, like 8 or 9 games now, including their first playoff game with Boston. Off those 3 categories, and someone obviously, again, who's played in the league, you're a veteran, can that work for guys that have never really played together? Can you find your chemistry in the playoffs when you said everybody's playing hard? Is that something that can be realistic?
They can, but so much of that is going to be shouldered on James Harden. And, James Harden's never been in a situation, people always say he's a ball hog, too much dribbling, but James Harden's never had options to his left on his right. 2 finals stars and guys who have hit the big shot. Kyrie from that right wing on Klay Thompson, and KD from the top of the key over LeBron James. James Harden, if he can make this thing work and he's aggressive, does enough of his scoring and feeds and facilitates, I think that he makes Brooklyn just extremely dangerous. But he's going to have to be the guy to do it. I played against James. I played with Kyrie. I played against KD. But the one thing is, James is the best passer there. He will make the right basketball play every time down the floor. I remember Clint Capella would be open for a lob, and he's going to throw it out of bounds trying to get him the basketball because it's the correct play to make. And that's where James Harden becomes special. And if he can pass at a high level, which I'm not saying that we can't, we know that maybe his scoring hadn't been there in the biggest games, but if he can pass at a high level and play make, that's what sets that team apart. And to answer your questions about the short amount of time of chemistry, that changes it. For instance, I'll give you this. I joined the Celtics, and they threw me in one of the first or second games. I didn't even know all the plays, but I was on the floor with Rajon Rondo. So, right. We connected on a few lobs immediately just because he's that type of player. Jason Kidd, the same way. Chris Paul, the same way. We don't even know all the plays, and, you're getting the rewards of a great player. So James Harden can have that similar effect. I just think people overlook his ability to pass.
Right. No, that's interesting. I think in a weird way, people thought I was crazy for saying this. I think Kevin Durant's the best player on the team, but I think Harden's the most valuable player.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Easy call.
Yeah. Well, see, great minds think alike there, Ryan. I want to transition. Finally, my last team in the East is Philly. I think a lot of people have it between Philly and Brooklyn coming out of the East. I've said Brooklyn's pure talent and offensive scoring will be too much, but if any team in the East will do it, it would be Philly. It looks like they will cross paths. Let's just assume they do. How do you see that going? Or who do you have going to the finals out of the East?
I have the Nets going, but,
Okay.
Brooklyn has a chance to just beat the crap out of them. Ben Simmons is seen under Doc Rivers just bought in and said, I'm a slasher. I'm going to play under the defense. Embiid has been untouchable. In the low block, he's really worked on his footwork. I thought he lacked sometimes going over his right shoulder. He gets the bully ball rather than finesse. And, late into the playoffs, bully ball is not going to be something that works. I think Philly has a shot to just beat the crap out of them. And that's what would work. And maybe there's injuries or something that happens, God forbid. But, I'm leaning on KD. I'm trying to move KD. I'm leaning on James Harden. I want him to run off screens and have to defend, So I think it's an intriguing matchup. But by firepower alone, it's just tough because the game comes down at the highest levels to a lot of one-on-one. Execution is important, but a lot of one-on-one because you run a play to get a guy off. And you got three different weapons when one isn't rolling. And, even in the Boston series, game one looked over and Boston just could not match the firepower of the Nets. At some point, they just fell off. And it's difference between a role player, a first three-quarter scorer, and a fourth-quarter scorer. That fourth-quarter scorer is going to set you over the top, and the Nets have 3 fourth-quarter scores.
Right. I feel like Doc Rivers hasn't gotten his flowers really either. I think a lot of people now. Coach Tibbs deserves it. Coach Williams in Phoenix deserves it. Obviously Quinn Snyder, but this Philly team, even though it had talent, was not the Philly team we see this year. Like this year, they're not only are they a first seed, Embiid's an MVP candidate, and looks like Ben Simmons Defensive Player of the Year. Do you think Doc has gotten his fair due?
Yes and no. He's not up for any awards. Tom Thibodeau did the unthinkable. Monty Williams really started his run last year in the playoffs. Quinn Snyder has been excellent. I think he's really been good. He's been in the running for a while. But Doc has been great. Maybe, we've seen this act from Doc before. That's the question marks. But the one thing Doc has done in Philly, a coach that I played under, he set the culture there. And he knows how to make you believe. And, I know from playing with Doc, where you're supposed to be each and every time down on the floor. So he's telling Embiid, hey, your left shoulder jump hook, I like this against this guy. You're popping against him. Ben Simmons, you're in the dunker, you're here. You got to think Doc won a championship with Rajon Rondo at the point. Ben Simmons, a very similar skill set at 6'9". When we're talking about a non-shooter and arguably a much better finisher, the dude's built like LeBron James or Magic Johnson, okay? So Doc definitely deserves his roses. I understand him not being in play for a coach of the year, but, you got to put some respect on his name.
Yeah, they're big, Ryan. Ben, Danny Green, Dwight Howard, Joel Embiid. They are Tobias Harris. If Tobias Harris plays the way he played, they're going to be a scary out. 37 points. They're going to be scary. I want to transition to this. I've called LeBron Bluetooth and there's Wi-Fi because originally it started where it's like LeBron MJ. And I said, I think we can appreciate both of them if we do this. If you think MJ's better, I'm not going to convince you otherwise. That's perfectly fine. They're both amazing. But I've said MJ's Wi-Fi. He doesn't connect with everybody, but when he does, it's a stronger signal. LeBron James, meanwhile, may not have the strongest connection with all of his teammates, but when he does, he can connect with everybody. He can connect with no matter who you plug and play with him. We've seen it in Cleveland. We've seen it in Miami. We're seeing it in LA. So I'm not really worried that the Lakers lost that first game to Phoenix because I know what I'm getting with him. I know what he can elevate others once he figures out the defensive schemes. Like there's a weird stat of he always loses that game one and then he just bounces back. We saw it last year in the bubble. Would you be worried if you're LA considering the Phoenix team that we see this year?
No, I wouldn't. The one concern that we know is Dwight Howard's gone, and he made just Philly even that more loaded. They don't have any rim protection, but LeBron James alone, he's more than enough. You got to understand, LeBron is the guy who's going to make Anthony Davis more comfortable. When he plays well, Anthony Davis plays well. When he plays well, Drummond's going to play even better, and getting production out of those guys, they end up beating you up on the glass and in the paint. So with LeBron, there's always the confidence there. And I've seen this story too many times before, bro, where LeBron has kind of just played coy. He's lost the game. He looks uninterested, maybe a little banged up, and he just comes out like wildfire. So, Phoenix, I'm intrigued for game 2 to see that Monty knows that he's going to have a different game plan. Monty knows he's going to be seeing the real LeBron James and what adjustments are going to make to Devin Booker. Is Devin Booker going to be the same guy he was in game 2 that he was in game 1? So I'd be extremely surprised, but it's always a dangerous spot to go to where you don't have a lead and you have a team where you could, fall in danger of going down, 0-2, 0-3, and that's the kiss of death, 0-3, brother. So, you never like to see it, but somehow that kid from Akron likes playing with his back against the wall, and I've been on the other side, unfortunately.
Yeah. I've said players are defined by moments. Like Ja Morant just had the moment of his career. Just seeing him with Golden State and what he did in the crunch. Trae Young just had his moment. Like there's just moments that define a career against an MSG, get your playoff debut. You just can't write that. And then I thought about it. We're looking at this new wave. You look at the Bookers, the Jaws, the Trays. And I started thinking about moments. I'm like, what younger player has more moments than Luka? And I've said Luka, in my opinion, could be, I know we're so quick to say who's the next face, but I think if anyone were to get it, it would be him. I think Zion may be the number one watch, but I think Luka may be the next face. What are your thoughts on how he handles big moments? And then we just saw it again against the Clippers.
He's been a pro since he was 16. You can go on record and watch me. I said he should have been drafted number 1. I was appalled that he wasn't. This was the most no-brainer pick that I had seen was Luka Doncic because he's a grown man. I played in the Spanish league, and Real Madrid they're the Yankees of the Spanish league. They're playing the best of the best, and he was the best player on their team for a couple of years to come. And it enamored me that he wasn't picked that high. The level of basketball that he played at is very high detail oriented. There aren't actions, there aren't accidents. If you can't go to your left hand, a team is going to force you left all game long. Or if you can't shoot in a certain situation, they're going to game plan the details and force you into that shot. So if you're watching Luka, because of that, he has no holes in his game. And he's big and he's stronger than you think he is. And he just knows how to play. And he puts pressure on you with his physicality. Only question for Luka is he going to take care of his body? LeBron James spent over $1 million on his body and made sure that he was ready to play on all cylinders every game. Is Luka going to do the same thing? Is he going to get chiseled, or are we going to keep seeing baby fat on him? That's the only thing in his way from being the face of the league. And I'll say the same for Zion. And that's why people almost default back to Ja Morant and say, Ja Morant's going to be it because he's skinny, he's healthy, he could run all day, and he was going to play at a high level. So I think it's in Luka's hands to miss out on. Zion would have to do something outside the paint necessarily, but Ja Morant's kind of the guy next up. Like, well, if y'all don't want to do it, I'm not going nowhere.
Right. Luka's just an ultimate problem solver. Before I get to my last question, just a little caveat from this. You played for the Mavs, and I've always wondered this. Why is it not a huge free agent destination? You have a great owner, great coach. You have the superstar now, no state tax. I'm so surprised, and I think we're going to finally see it, but why hasn't it been a free agent destination?
In the NBA, the wing is king. And there's only probably 3 players we could say that championships go through of the last decade, that we've seen, and maybe prior, or let's date it a little bit. The go-to was, hey, first Kobe Bryant was an attractable guy to play with. Kobe and Shaq. Obviously San Antonio was intriguing, but you weren't trying to take less. Then you go Kawhi, you go LeBron, you go Steph. You don't have one of those guys, you're not a free agent destination. That's just the reality. And you're not LA or New York, or potentially we saw it in Miami. It's just not going to work out because those big markets, superstar players want to go to big markets and win big because they win big off the court. But ultimately, you would have to have a real attraction for people to want to come to Dallas and play. But I played in Dallas. It's beautiful. It is as nice as they come. So I think that, Mark Cuban is kind of the player away. I think Luka potentially could be that guy that someone shocks the world and says, man, I'm going to go team him up with Luka. We're going to do something with Luka, and that's going to match. In our dream world, Max, I'm sure you got excited just as I did at the thought of Giannis and Luka.
Yes.
So ultimately, I think that could be a destination if Luka keeps playing at the level that he's playing at. Once LeBron fades, KD fades, and if he continues to elevate, it will be a big-time free agent destination.
Yeah, that's intriguing. I think it will be. Mark Cuban's one of my ultimate interviews I would like to land, and that's one of the things I wanted to pick his brain on because he's such an involved owner that I thought, like, as a player, that's something that you want as an owner that cares, that communicates. My last question for you is this. I said it last year, and I'm not scared to be wrong, so I'll say it again even when they were in the play-in. I thought the Lakers were going to repeat. I had them winning last year, and I have them winning this year. I have them beating Brooklyn. What is your outcome of everything as far as finals and then championship?
I stick with the Lakers.
Okay.
We talked about chemistry. We talked about leadership. A guy who can go and get it done. There's a different type of physicality and experience. And when we get to an NBA Finals that I think the Laker role players have understood. KCP is very underappreciated for what he does. He busts his butt. He defends. And he's always in the right places. He just, he's had his scare of shooting slumps. But, they have championship pieces that are still there. And LBJ is like he's just something else in the sense of he counts for two superstars. So let's say the Nets got three, Lakers got three too because LeBron is two. For his scoring ability and his passing ability.
Right.
He's going to go down top three in the NBA in scoring and assists.
Insane.
Right? And that we're going to look at that list and go, wow, top three in scoring and assists. Okay, Michael, you ain't nowhere on this assist board. Okay.
No.
So, that's a discussion for another day. But I ultimately would give that ad if both are the nod, if both are healthy, to the Lakers.
You've always been a San Francisco fan?
Oh yeah, 49ers, man, 49ers. But Montana and Rice, those they got me hooked a long time ago, man.
Okay, I'm about to say, I just noticed the shirt. What did you think of the draft this year? You liked it?
I wish we had got Aaron Rodgers, to be honest. And,
Really?
Trey Lance is going to be special.
You think you had a legitimate shot of that?
Yeah, absolutely. But just Green Bay, it looked like their front office were on two different pages. We want Aaron, we don't want Aaron, but we want him to just kind of be here. Like they're all over the place, and hopefully he gets paid or they attract some big time trade or maybe they get Julio, who knows. Hopefully they can do something in Green Bay to appease Aaron Rodgers. I just don't think you ever treat your superstar the way that he was treated. And it was really tough to see a guy coming off a year that Aaron Rodgers just came off of. And then you saying you don't want him to go either. And you probably could get the most trade value right now that you could for him, period.
Yeah, and they're not playing ball. They're not doing it. But I say I like Shanahan, and I thought it was smart to keep Jimmy for as long as you can. So I think San Francisco has a good direction. If you have the Lakers winning and you're a fan of San Francisco, you're going to be a happy sports fan.
Absolutely.
All right, Ryan. Well, I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. For everyone listening, when is your next show? Where can they find you? Where can they bug you? Where can they send you hate mail? All that good stuff.
Check out my IG, Ryan Hollins. The Ryan Hollins on Twitter. Myself and Brendan Haywood, Opinionated 7-Footers Podcast, iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, all that good stuff. And, we go on our IG Live on Instagram, every weekday. We go around 1 p.m. Pacific. And if not, you can catch the replay. So, man, appreciate you having me on, man, and great content, brother. Keep up the good work. Seriously.
I appreciate it, Ryan. Thank you very much. Until next time, we'll talk soon.